I stood 3 feet from my twin sister in a sealed room beneath our family compound in Tabuk and gave her one final chance to deny the name of Jesus Christ so she could live. She looked at me with steady eyes, blood already drying on her lip from where our uncle had struck her, and said the 6 words that should have ended her life and instead ended mine. But the moment the blade was drawn and her executioner stepped forward, something filled that room that stopped time itself and left 5 grown men flat on the ground, unable to move or speak. Have you ever been so certain you were saving someone's life that you could not see you were the one standing on the edge of death? My name is Karim ibn Sultan al-Bishi. I am 29 years old, and on the 3rd of November, 2021, I stood inside a locked basement chamber in our family's compound in the Al Rauda district of Tabuk, Saudi Arabia, and delivered what was meant to be the final ultimatum to my twin sister Huda before the family carried out a sentence of death for her secret conversion to Christianity. I had no idea that the Jesus she refused to deny was about to walk into that room and destroy everything I had ever believed about God, about justice, and about who deserved to live. Let me tell you who we were before that night, because without that, you will not understand the weight of what my sister did or why it broke me in half. My father, Prince Sultan bin Rashid al-Bishi, was a prominent religious benefactor who funded mosque construction and Islamic education programs across the Tabuk province. He sat on the local religious advisory council and was consulted regularly on matters of Islamic law. In our world, his word was not opinion, it was ruling. Our compound in the Al Rauda district sat behind high sandstone walls with a private mosque at its center. The adhan echoed through our hallways 5 times a day from our own muezzin, a Sudanese man named Abu Ibrahim, who had served the family for 18 years. My mother, Thuraya bint Muhammad, wore full niqab and had never been seen by a non-related male since her marriage at 19. She taught the Quran to the women and girls of the district every Wednesday and was known for her sharp memory and even sharper discipline. The smell of sandalwood incense and Saudi coffee with cardamom filled every corridor of that house, and those scents still follow me into rooms where they have no right to be. My father taught me from earliest childhood that Christians were people trapped in the deepest form of spiritual deception. He said they committed shirk, the unforgivable sin, by worshiping a man as God. He said their Bible was a corrupted text filled with inventions designed to lead the faithful astray. By 17, I was part of a group of young men from prominent families who worked with the religious authorities to monitor foreign workers in Tabuk suspected of Christian worship. We reported Ethiopian domestic workers, Filipino nurses, and Indian laborers who were caught with Bibles or holding prayer meetings in rented apartments. I helped confiscate their books. I watched them lose their jobs and leave the country. I felt nothing but the bright, clean certainty that I was doing sacred work. I had no idea that the faith I was crushing in strangers had already taken root in the person who shared my blood, my birthday, and my face. By 27, I had completed a degree in architectural engineering from Tabuk University. I managed design projects for the family's construction firm. I was engaged to a woman named Safa bint Walid al-Shamrani, the daughter of a military family my parents had known for a generation. I had everything: a career, a name, a future wife, and a God I had never once questioned. Ask yourself this question: have you ever been so sure of the ground beneath your feet that you never noticed the person standing right beside you had already stepped onto different soil?
هدى كانت توأمي، ولدت بعد 11 دقيقة مني. شاركنا كل شيء أثناء نشأتنا، ليس فقط رحما وذكرى ميلاد، بل لغة لا يستطيع أحد سماعها. كانت تستطيع إنهاء جملتي. كنت أستطيع قراءة مزاجها من عبر الغرفة. كانت رائعة، هادئة، فطنة بالطريقة التي يكون بها الأشخاص الذين يستمعون أكثر مما يتحدثون. دائما درست الأدب في كلية نسائية في تبوك، وتحدثت 3 لغات. كانت كل شيء جعلتها والدتنا تكونه: متدينة، مطيعة، مغطاة، صامتة. أو هكذا اعتقدنا جميعا. ما لم يكن أحد منا يعرفه هو أنه قبل 1.5 عام أعطت خادمة إندونيسية تدعى ست هدى إنجيلا عربيا صغيرا. كانت ستي تعمل في مجمعنا لمدة 4 سنوات. كانت هادئة وحذرة، ولم تتحدث مرة واحدة عن إيمانها. لكن هدى أخبرتني لاحقا أنها لاحظت شيئا مختلفا عن ستي. سلام، ثبات، طريقة لامتصاص القسوة دون ردها. سألتها هدى مرة في خصوصية: ما الذي يجعلها هادئة جدا؟
City gave her the Bible and said, "Read this, then you will understand." Huda read it in secret for 18 months. She told me later that the Jesus she found in those pages was nothing like the dead prophet our parents had described. He spoke with authority. He forgave the unforgivable. He touched the untouchable. He claimed to be something no mere prophet would dare claim, and she believed him. I had no idea that the sister who prayed beside me 5 times a day had already given her heart to a different God entirely. I had no idea that the faith I was crushing in strangers had been growing silently in the person closest to me on earth. The discovery came through a mistake. Huda left the Bible tucked inside a textbook on her desk. A younger cousin visiting the house found it while looking for a pen. Within an hour, my uncle Bandar held it in his hands. Within 2 hours, my father knew. The fury that swept through our compound that evening was unlike anything I had witnessed. My father called an emergency family council. My uncle Bandar, a retired military officer with a voice like grinding stone, demanded immediate action. Sheikh Murad, a religious scholar who served as my father's advisor, was summoned. He arrived within the hour and declared that a Muslim woman who secretly converts to Christianity and reads the Bible in a household of believers has committed the highest form of apostasy. The sentence, under the interpretation of law my family followed, was death. Our plan was straightforward. Huda would be brought to the lower chamber. She would be given one opportunity to recant, to denounce Jesus, and reaffirm her Islamic faith. If she refused, the sentence would be carried out privately, within the family, and never spoken of again. I was chosen to deliver the ultimatum. I was her twin. They believed she would listen to me. I felt completely certain that Allah required this. I had zero doubt. The night before, I prayed tahajjud at 2 in the morning and asked Allah for the strength to save my sister from herself. But as I pressed my forehead to the prayer rug, I felt a weight on my chest I could not explain, like a hand pressing down from within. I told myself it was grief. I told myself it was the burden of being the one who loved her most, and therefore must be the one to bring her back. I barely slept. Have you ever been so convinced you were defending truth that you never questioned whether truth itself might be standing on the other side of the door? They brought Huda to the lower chamber at 9 o'clock the next evening. The room was beneath the main house, a concrete space with whitewashed walls and a single fluorescent light. My father sat in a wooden chair against the far wall. My uncle Bandar stood beside him with his arms crossed. Sheikh Murad was near the door. 2 guards from the household security stood at the entrance. Huda walked in wearing a plain white garment. Her hair was uncovered. There was a bruise on her left cheekbone from where Bandar had struck her that afternoon. She walked to the center of the room and stood still. The air smelled of damp concrete and disinfectant. The fluorescent light hummed and flickered. There was no beauty in that room, no candles, no incense, no stained glass, just bare walls and 5 men and 1 woman standing between them and the God they did not believe she had met. Huda looked calm. Impossibly calm, like someone standing in the eye of a hurricane who has already decided not to run. I stepped forward. I stood 3 feet from her. I looked into the face that was closer to mine than any face on earth. I said, "Huda, you have one chance. Renounce this blasphemy. Say the Shahada. Return to Islam. And this ends tonight. No one needs to know." She looked at me. Her eyes were wet but steady. She did not blink. She said, "Kareem, I love you, but I cannot deny the one who saved me. Jesus is the Son of God. He is alive, and he is standing in this room right now." Those were the 6 words. He is standing in this room. My uncle Bandar stepped forward and pulled a ceremonial blade from a sheath at his side. Sheikh Murad nodded. My father did not move. His face was stone. I stepped back. Bandar raised the blade above Huda's neck. She closed her eyes. She whispered, "Jesus, I am yours. Receive me." That is when it happened. The moment that changed everything I believed about God. The blade stopped. Bandar's arm froze in the air. His hand locked around the handle. His muscles strained, but the arm would not come down. He let out a sound I had never heard from a grown man, something between a gasp and a cry. Then I felt it. A wave of heat that started at the center of the room and expanded outward like a shockwave made of warmth. It hit my chest first, then my arms, then my legs. My knees buckled. I hit the concrete floor. The fluorescent light above us burst. The room should have gone black. It did not. A golden light filled the space from no source I could identify. It came from everywhere, from the walls, from the floor, from the air itself. It was warm and alive, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. I looked at Huda. She was glowing. The same golden light that filled the room was pouring off her skin like heat from desert sand at midday. Except it was not heat. It was something else, something that carried weight and tenderness at the same time. The bruise on her cheek was gone. Her face was radiant, peaceful, unafraid. Then I saw him, standing directly behind Huda with his hands resting on her shoulders, a figure made of the same golden light, but more solid, more present, more real than anything I had ever seen with open eyes. His face held no anger, no vengeance, only a sorrow so vast it felt like the grief of the entire world compressed into two eyes, and a love so enormous that looking into it felt like being pulled apart and put back together in the same breath. He looked at me, directly at me, and he spoke, not aloud, inside my chest, inside my skull, inside the marrow of my bones. Kareem, she chose correctly. You were not sent here to save her. She was sent here to save you. I have loved you since before you shared a womb with her. Come to me. I collapsed forward. My forehead hit the concrete. I was weeping so violently my body convulsed. The tears were hot and relentless, and they came from somewhere deeper than my eyes. Bandar was on the floor behind me. The blade had fallen from his hand and lay on the concrete reflecting golden light. My uncle was trembling with his face in his hands. Sheikh Murad was on his knees by the door, whispering words I could not hear. The two guards had backed against the wall, and one of them had slid to the floor. My father. My father was still in his chair, but his head was bowed and his shoulders were shaking. Huda knelt beside me. She placed her hand on my back. She said, "He loves you, Kareem. He has been waiting for you your whole life." Minutes could have been hours. I do not know how long we stayed in that room. Ask yourself this question. How do you explain meeting the living God in a room that was built to carry out a death sentence in his name? When I finally lifted my head, the golden light had dimmed, but the warmth remained. I looked at Huda and asked the only question I had left. What do I do now? She sat beside me on the concrete floor of that basement chamber, in the very room where she had been brought to die, and she told me about Jesus. She told me about grace. She told me about a cross and an empty tomb, and a love that did not require obedience first, but offered it as a response to something already given. She held my hands, the hands of the brother who had just delivered her death sentence, and she prayed with me. I said, "Jesus, I have been wrong about you my entire life. I delivered my own sister to her death because I hated your name. I have persecuted your people. I have destroyed your word. But I saw you tonight. I know you are real. Forgive me. Save me. I surrender my life to you completely." Huda wept, not with grief, with a joy so full it spilled out of her like light. One of the household guards, a man named Riyadh, who had served our family for 7 years, crawled across the floor and asked to pray the same prayer. Then the second guard, Othman, joined. 4 people converted in that basement room. I had no idea that the chamber where my sister was meant to be executed would become the place where I was born again. I was baptized 2 months later in a secret ceremony in Jordan. I chose the name Stephen because Stephen was the first martyr, and my sister's willingness to die was the very thing that brought me to life. What happened next changed everything. The cost was devastating and immediate. My father never recovered from what he saw in that room. He refused to speak of it. He refused to speak to me. Through my uncle Bandar, who himself had been shaken to silence, my father sent a message the following day. His voice, relayed through Bandar's trembling mouth, was cold. "You are no longer my son. You are dead to this family. Take your sister and leave before sunset." My mother called me that afternoon. She was weeping so hard the words fell apart in her mouth. She said, "You were supposed to save her. Instead, she destroyed you both." She blocked both our numbers. I have not heard her voice since. That was 3 years ago. My engagement to Safa ended with a single text from her father. This family does not associate with apostates. Former friends held funeral prayers for Huda and me as though we had died in an accident. Our names were struck from every family record. My engineering work was terminated. Our bank accounts were frozen. Huda and I fled to Jordan within a week. then to a European country I cannot name for our safety. Everything I believed was about to be shattered, and it was. I lost my father, my mother, my career, my country, my twin bond as the family understood it, and the only identity I had ever worn. But I gained everything that truly matters. I gained Jesus Christ. I gained my sister back, not as a blood relative only, but as a partner in a faith that had cost us everything and given us more. I gained forgiveness for sins I am still learning to name. I gained a peace that has not left me for a single day since that night on the basement floor. Look inside your own heart right now and ask yourself whether the identity you are protecting is worth more than the truth that is trying to reach you. 18 months after we arrived in Europe, I met a Christian woman named Esther at the church where Huda and I worship. She was an Eritrean believer, a nurse who had walked across 2 borders to reach a country where she could worship freely. We married at that same church. The pastor who had sheltered us during our first desperate months officiated. Riyadh, the guard who had converted on the basement floor, traveled from the Gulf to stand beside me. Huda read from the Gospel of John during the ceremony. Today, Huda leads a ministry for Muslim women across the Middle East who are facing persecution for their faith in Jesus. She works through encrypted networks and safe houses. She has helped over 60 women escape situations like her own. I serve alongside her, sharing my testimony with anyone willing to listen. Over 115 Muslims have given their lives to Christ after hearing what happened in that basement. Some were scholars, some were soldiers. Some were men who, like me, had held the power of life and death over someone they loved, and discovered that the God they thought demanded death was actually offering life. I returned once to the outskirts of Tabuk. I stood on a hill overlooking the city and prayed for my mother and my father from a distance. I still write to them twice a year. I send the letters through a trusted cousin. I have never received a reply. My daughter Noor was born 9 months ago. The first words she heard were not the Adhan, but a hymn sung by her mother in Tigrinya about a God who rescues. I tell her every night that her grandmother and grandfather love her, even though they have never held her. I believe they will. I have to believe that. If he can transform someone like me, a man who stood 3 feet from his own twin sister and delivered a death sentence for speaking the name of Jesus, then no distance is too far and no heart is too sealed. The Saudi prince who walked into a basement to silence the name of Jesus no longer exists. In his place stands a servant of Jesus Christ who would walk into that room 1,000 times over before he would ever deny the voice that spoke his name while golden light poured from his sister's skin. If Jesus can forgive and transform someone like me, someone who handed his own twin to an executioner because she dared to love a God he was too proud to see, then he can absolutely forgive and transform you, no matter what you have done or where you come from. The same Jesus who walked into a sealed room beneath a Saudi compound and stopped a blade in midair and broke a brother's pride with nothing but his presence is standing before you right now through this very testimony. He is offering you the same love, the same mercy, the same impossible rescue that changed everything for me and for Huda. Jesus is calling you right now. Do not wait for golden light or a frozen blade. He is already pursuing you. He has been pursuing you since before you pressed play on this video. Will you let him in and discover the love that stops death itself?